The Emerald Dream is one of the most mysterious places in World of Warcraft. It has been in the game files in one way or another for basically as far back we can follow the game's development. It is no secret that the unfinished Emerald Dream is in the game files, and because of that, players have always been asking and wondering about this place and when we will be able to experience it. Throughout the years, even though we have never been able to actually go into the zone itself, there has been a lot of content relating to the Dream. Since Legion is finally bringing a lot of Dream-related content, it is time to go back and see how this place has evolved from early concepts until today. This is the evolution of the Emerald Dream. Enjoy! So let's start this video by going back to the very first beta build of Vanilla. This was version 0.6.0, and it was the first time a map called Emerald Dream appeared in game files. It was made up by a few valleys, each the size of your average leveling zone, and there really wasn't much to it. It was basically just green wastelands, and the only exception was one small area where you could see a few flowers. It is hard to take away anything about how this map was actually going to look, but I think it's safe to say that the developers were aiming for something massive with this zone. This iteration would however not be around for long, because already in patch 0.7 it was scrapped entirely for a new Dream map. This one consisted of two zones, one very similar to the one we already had, and another one with a much darker tone, perhaps related to the Emerald Nightmare. Throughout the beta, this map actually received a few updates all the way up to version 0.10. By this time it contained 3 entire zones and several small fragments in between. Of course, none of it was remotely finished, but we are still looking at maps the size of 3 or even 4 leveling zones shipped with the vanilla game files, where they have stayed since then. Because that's the case with these maps, they are still in Warlords of Draenor, they have just never been used. Now when we know a bit about the early designs of the Emerald Dream, let's look into some of the information that we can gather about what Blizzard intended to use it for. Rumors dating back to long before the game was even released suggested that this was going to be an endgame zone added in a later patch. And Tygal actually mentioned the area twice back in 2003, where he said the following: "Actually, we have some pretty cool stuff planned for druids. They will definitely have a link to the Emerald Dream. There is also a zone on the way to the peak of Mount Hyjal called Moonglade that will be the very core of druid characters. Our master of Warcraft lore, Chris Metzen, is never short of ideas when it comes to the druid class. I was running around the Emerald Dream last Thursday. You guys are in for a treat. The level designers are doing a killer job." His next quote reads like this: "The Emerald Dream is shaping up to be extremely cool. We don't want to preview any content yet, as it is endgame and we want some surprises for players. The zone is massive and beautiful, and once the content team is done with it, it will be exceedingly challenging." So these quotes back up that they were going to make some sort of endgame zone with really challenging content, and we have to assume that when he said that he was running around the Emerald Dream, he was referring to the map files that we have in the game files. Despite its size, however, the map in the game files is listed as a raid, not a zone. This led to later speculations that Blizzard had planned this to be a raid, but they then scrapped it because they had bigger and grander plans. The community manager Nethara said the following in 2006. "As for the Emerald Dream, there are no plans for anything as of yet, but it is a consideration for the future. The Emerald Dream opens up a lot of different opportunities, and the Burning Crusade is definitely not going to be the last of the expansion packs. There are many different places and storyline that can be pursued. The story is going to keep growing, and as it does so, people will get to experience it." So just like with other things later in WoW's history, the Emerald Dream in its original sense, whatever it was exactly, was scrapped in order for Blizzard to follow other ideas. So we never got the Emerald Dream zone itself, but we did get content related to it. Throughout the years it has been everything from bosses to quests and items, so we're going to move on and look at those. The Emerald Nightmare plays a role in the Wailing Caverns, one of the first dungeons available to low-level characters. In here, the druid Naralex tried to siphon the energies of the Emerald Dream to be able to restore the lushness and fertility of the barrens. However, the vision turned into a nightmare, and soon both the druids and the caverns itself had become corrupted. In the sunken temple, we also hear about the corruption of Veronica, a green dragon that had been sent there by Asera to take care of the trolls trying to summon Hakar the Soul Flayer. He and his lesser dragons eventually fell to the corruption themselves, and Veronica now serves as the final boss of the dungeon. In patch 1.8, the Dragons of Nightmare were added to the game. These were 4 outdoor raid bosses, located by the Emerald Dream portals in Duskwood, Hinterlands, Feralas, and Ashenvale. Each and every one of these bosses dropped a nightmare-engulfed object, an item which they supposedly brought from the nightmare. Taking this to Keeper Remelos in Moonglade allows the player to hear a dialogue between him and Malfurion Stormrage, who is fighting the nightmare from inside the dream. Here, Remelos asks about the corruption, and Malfurion explains the following. I fear the worst, old friend. Within the dream we fight a new foe born of an ancient evil. Ysera's noble brood has fallen victim to the old whisperings. It seems as if the nightmare has broken through the realm to find a new host on Azeroth. Remulus then asks about Cenarius and Illidan and gets the following explanation. Cenarius fights at my side. Illidan sits atop of his throne in Outland, brooding. I am afraid that the loss to Arthas proved to be his breaking point. Madness has embraced him, Remelos. He replays the events in his mind 1,000 times per day, but in his mind he is the victor and Arthas is utterly defeated. He is too far gone, old friend. I fear that the time may soon come that our bond is tested, and it will not be as it was at the well in Sinashari. So patch 1.8 brought both bosses and lore connected to the Emerald Dream, and even more would come in patch 1.9, where players would set out to craft the Scepter of the Shifting Sands in order to open the raid dungeons of Ankh-Kiraj. This required the players to seek out the red, blue and green dragonflights to acquire the shards which the scepter was made of. Ironicus, the corrupted dragon from the sunken temple, holds the green scepter shard, but he won't give it up. Instead, Keeper Remelos asks us to gather fragments of the nightmare's corruption to summon Ironicus into Moonglade. Now the players had to hold him at bay until Tyrann the Whisperwind arrived and cleansed the dragon with the power of a loon. After he is redeemed, Ironicus hands over the shard and returns to the Emerald Dream to fight the nightmare. So during the course of Vanilla WoW, there were actually quite a lot of content related to the dream, and during the expansions some more has popped up here and there. In the Burning Crusade, the Nightmare has found a way into one of the wings of Stormrage Barrow Dens, and the Cenarian Dream Warden are constantly trying to keep the threat at bay. It seemed that Anzu was behind these attacks, and druids had to deal with this in order to finish their quest chain and unlock the Swift Flight form. In Wrath of the Lich King, we actually get a quest from Remelos, where he tells us to go into the dream by ourselves. We have to collect 3 emerald acorns, which only exist within the Emerald Dream. However, everything takes place in a phased version of Moonglade with a green filter, and we are never really entering a new map or a new environment. And a similar thing happens in Icecrown Citadel during the encounter with Valithra Dreamwalker. She opens dream portals where we can go inside and collect buffs, but this is again only a phased version of the same room we are already in. After the revamping of Azeroth, which came with Cataclysm, the Emerald Nightmare also made another appearance in the Southern Barrens. Here, the overgrowth is a lush area that has been regrown thanks to the efforts of Naralex from the Wailing Caverns. However, it has indeed been affected by the Emerald Nightmare. So up until Legion, the Emerald Dream and the Emerald Nightmare has always been there in a sense, but we have never been able to actually experience it. Now that is going to change. Most notably, the Emerald Nightmare has been introduced as a raid, where we are going to climb the tree of Shaladrasil and pass between the barriers of reality and dream as we pursue scenarios and battle the corruption.
So the first raid, this is going to be the Emerald Nightmare itself. We have heard from players as long as we can remember, since really the first days of World of Warcraft, that they wanted to see the Emerald Dream. You fought those green dragons that came out of the portals, the 4 green dragons in early WoW, and you just wanted to go through those portals to see what was on the other side, right? Well, now you get to. The Emerald Dream was created by the Titans as a blueprint for Azeroth itself. It was the perfect, untarnished, unspoiled version of our world, verdant and green and full of life. But something has gone horribly wrong here, and the Emerald Dream has descended into corruption, into nightmare, and that threatens to spread into our world and engulf it. So, whereas in the dungeon, we descend into the roots of the tree, for the raid, we're initially actually going to climb up into the tree itself and actually cross through the barrier that separates our reality from the reality of the dream. We will go in, root out corruption, seek out Cenarius, and ultimately confront Xavius himself at the heart of the nightmare in this ultimate conflict that will end the corruption of the Emerald Dream.
In addition to the raid, druids will get even more content related to the dream. In order to retrieve the Restoration artifact weapon, they need to go into the Emerald Dream and collect it themselves. They also have access to the Dreamway, a location within the dream that is connected to a lot of natural places on Azeroth. For instance, you will be able to travel to all the 4 locations where you once fought the Dragons of Nightmare in Vanilla, but also places like Val'sharah and Moonglade. So in the end, it only took 13 years from the time that the Emerald Dream was first added in the game files to the time that it became actual playable content. Of course, what we get in Legion has nothing to do with the original ideas back from 2003, and please let me know in the comments down below what you think about what we actually got in the end. As Ian said, players have been asking basically from the first day of World of Warcraft to get inside the Emerald Dream and see what it looks like. So if there is a piece of content that they can be sure that the player base have really high expectations for, it is this. Alright, now you know how the Emerald Dream has evolved from early development up until Legion, and with that I'm going to end the video. If you liked it, do give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will be back with more content very soon. But until then, take care.